אוקיי, בסדר גמור. בוקר טוב לכולם. בוקר טוב, תודה שהצטרפתם. בוקר טוב וברוכים הבאים לוובינר שלנו, חברת Wediggit, בשיתוף חברת Jamf, על מובייל סקיוריטי והדרכים להגן על המכשירים הניידים בארגון בעת המודרנית. אני ניניו, מנהל ידע, אינטגרטור וגם מדריך מוסמך של Jamf בחברת Wediggit כאמור, אבל אני רק ה-MC הבוקר. את הוובינר יעביר אלמו, שהוא Security Sales Engineer בכיר בחברת Jamf, ולא הבין מילה ממה שאמרתי עד כה. Good morning, Elmo. Sorry for the Hebrew so far.
Morning.
We love having you here, and we are thrilled hearing all you have to tell us about mobile security by Jamf. We will begin with the webinar shortly, but first I'll detail our participants the agenda and what to expect today. אז התוכנית שלנו לבוקר קצר זה היא קודם כל להציג את Wediggit, למי שאולי טרם שמע או לא לגמרי יודע את כל מה שאנחנו עושים, כולל כמה עדכונים מהחודשים האחרונים. לאחר מכן אעביר את המושכות לאלמו למנה העיקרית, לוובינר, ובסיום ניתן כמובן זמן לשאלות. אוקיי? אז מי אנחנו? עם עשרות שנות ניסיון מצטברות בנינו את החברה סביב השיגעון המשותף שלנו, אפל כמובן. המטרה היא אחת, למצוא את הפתרון הטוב ביותר עבור הלקוחות שלנו, הלקוחות העסקיים, ארגוניים וגם האקדמיה והחינוך. החל כמובן ממחירת הפתרון המדויק ועד התאמת השירות והתמיכה הטובים ביותר בשוק, החל משירותי האחריות ומעבדה, כמובן למוצרים שאנחנו מוכרים, ועד שירותי IT מלאים, כולל הטמעת מוצרי הניהול הטובים בעולם, כמו Jamf, כמובן. כדי שנוכל לעמוד במילה שלנו, להיות הטובים ביותר והמשוגעים ביותר, פעלנו לקבל את ההסמכה הגבוהה והחשובה ביותר באפל לעולם העסקי. AAER, Apple Authorized Enterprise Reseller. ואחרי 3 שנים מפרכות, אנחנו היחידים בארץ והבודדים בעולם, שיכולים לספק לכם את הפתרונות ברמה הגבוהה שאתם מצפים מאפל. כמו שאתם רואים על המסך, זה תהליך ארוך ביותר, עם כמה יתרונות שרק אנחנו יכולים לספק. אבל כמובן שלא הכל מתחיל ונגמר בחומרה ובתוכנה של אפל, אנחנו כל הזמן פועלים להרחיב ולחדש בתחום, ובאקוסיסטם שחוצה וחופף את אפל. אז אני ארוץ בזריזות על החידושים אצלנו בווידיגיט, ונתחיל בהוק שלנו. הוק התבסס על הרבה פניות שהיו אלינו לאורך השנים, לכן בנינו כלי asset management שמותאם לסיסאדמין, כדי שאפשר יהיה סוף סוף לנהל בצורה אינטליגנטית את כל החומרה בארגון, מחשבים, מסכים, אביזרים, והכל בחלוקה למשתמשים, מיקומים ועוד. המערכת הזאת עונה על 3 שאלות בסיסיות לגבי חומרה בארגון, איפה נמצא הציוד, מי הספק ממנו רכשנו, ועד מתי יש לנו חוזה שירות או אחריות, וגם את של מי נמצא המוצר, ומתי הוא עבר אליו. זה לא שאין כבר פתרונות לנושא, מסתם לתעד הכל בגוגל שיט או אקסל וכדומה, ועד כל מיני תוספים לג'ירה, פרשרוויש או מערכות דומות של הלפדסק וכדומה. אבל אין אף מערכת שמתוכננת עבורכם, IT או הסיסאדמין, תוך מתן כל התשובות המדויקות, ועם דשבורד שכמו שאתם רואים למשך גם נראה מדהים. במבט אחד רואים את כל הפעולויות שמתוכננות החודש עבור ציוד בחברה, לפי איזה אלרטים שקבענו מראש, פילוחים של כמויות, לפי מחלקה, לפי אתר, פשוט כלי עבודה למנהל IT שיכול להשתכל במבט אחד ולראות הכל. לא, אני לא ארחיב מעבר לטיזר הקטן הזה, אולי שמתם לב שיש פה למעלה QR כזה בפינה, אתם יכולים לסרוק אותו, להשאיר פרטים לגבי מה שמעניין אתכם, ואחד ממנהלי תיקי הלקוחות שלנו יחזור אליכם, ככה לגבי כל הדברים שאני אדבר עכשיו גם בהמשך, מה שנוח לכם. כהשלמה לניהול החומרה, בואו נדבר קצת על ניהול התוכנה, ואני שמח לבשר שסוף סוף יש לנו שיתוף פעולה בין Wediggit גם לחברת Better Cloud. Better Cloud האמריקאית היא חלוצה בתחום ניהול ה-SaaS, Software as a Service, ויכולה לעזור במספר תחומים, למשל בנושא אונבורדינג ואופבורדינג, בתחום התוכנה, לא רק בתחום החומרה כמו שאנחנו מנסים לעשות עם הוק, או כמובן באופטימיזציה בעלויות של SaaS בארגון, תחום מאוד חשוב. ומי שמתבסס על גוגל וורקספייס, הפתרון הזה עובד באינטגרציה מושלמת, בילט-אין, ממש מותאם מושלם לגוגל וורקספייס, וסך הכל מספק מענה לניהול כל החשיפת מידע הארגוני שנעשה דרך שיתוף קבצים, למשל בגוגל וורקספייס, דרייב, ג'ימייל וכדומה. אבל אנחנו גם לא שוכחים את החשיבות של הנוכחות הפיזית שלנו במשרדים, עכשיו כשאנחנו חוזרים לאט לאט, ובעיקר את חדרי הישיבות. שזה נושא שהוא עם נראות מאוד מאוד גבוהה בארגון, ותמיד משהו לא עובד דווקא בישיבות הנהלה, משקיעים, וכולם יודעים לשאול למה רק אצלנו זה לא עובד כמו שצריך, ושאצלנו אני מתכוון למחלקת ה-IT שאיכשהו תמיד אשמה. אז לאחרונה סיימנו פרויקטים מוצלחים מרמת התכנון ועד תשתיות פסיביות, מוצרי תקשורת, ציוד לוג'יטק שאנחנו עובדים איתם בשיתוף פעולה, וגם אחרים אבל, תוך תמיכה מלאה בשיחות זום, גוגל מיט, מייקרוסופט טימס, הכל בהתאמה לצרכי הארגון, וניהול הפרויקט מ-A to Z, הכל אנחנו עושים, מלווים אתכם בהכל. ואם כבר שימוש טוב לחדר ישיבות, זה זמן טוב להזכיר שאנחנו מציעים הדרכות macOS מתקדמות לארגונים כבר שנים, וגם הרחבנו את הייצוג הבלעדי של ג'אמפ, לא רק בהטמעות וניהול, גם כמוסמכי הדרכה שלהם. שלום, זה אני. ואני מזמין את מי שלא הספיק להגיע לקורס הראשון של ג'אמפ 200 ever בעברית שעשינו, בפיקוח של ג'אמפ מחול, קורס רשמי, אז הקורס הבא שלנו הוא בינואר, כמו שאתם רואים פה למעלה, מהרו להירשם, ב-13 בינואר, קורס בעברית במשרדים שלנו בהרצליה, אתם יכולים להשתמש שוב ב-QR קוד הזה, ולהירשם, אנחנו נחזור לכם עם כל הפרטים, תאריכים, פרטים, מחירים, הכל, קורס ג'אמפ 200 רשמית של אפל, 4 ימים מלאים, עם מבחן, בסוף, השמחה רשמית של ג'אמפ בארץ איתנו, נשמח להדריך אתכם. ונסיים, אם כבר ג'אמפ, לציין ונעדכן שזכינו בפרס Excellence Award ייחודי עולמי כפרטנר מוביל ב-EMEIA, שזה כמובן מעמד נדיר לחברה ישראלית, כי ב-EMEIA יש גם את אנגליה ויש את הודו, ענקים, אז זה פרס שניתן לנו על יכולת טכנית מלאה, מדמואים ופריסלים עד הטמעות וכתיבת סקריפטים ופרופשיונל סרוויסס והדרכות ותמיכה, כל הדברים האלה אצלנו בישראל הקטנה. אז אנחנו מאוד גאים בזה, אפשר לראות פה נתי המנכ"ל שלנו והמנכ"לים נשאו לארצות הברית לקבל את הפרס הזה, אז גאווה גדולה. אז הפרס הזה מוביל באופן טבעי כמובן לעוד שיתופי פעולה כמו הוובינר הזה שאתם משתתפים בו עכשיו, לכן אני אעבור חזרה לאנגלית. And right before handing it over back to Elmo, let's chance to scan the QR code or write down our info and contact us to learn more about any of the exciting new stuff I just detailed. And now, Elmo, Jamf Security Sales Engineer, will let us know why securing a future using mobile security is essential to our organization and how Jamf can help us achieve it. Take it away, Elmo, and thank you.
Thanks, Nino. Yeah, my Hebrew is not that good yet, so forgive me, but we'll go with English today. Yeah, great being here and working with our partners. Wediggit on events like this. Definitely worthwhile, though, also doing the in-person events, such as the Jamf 200 training, that I think my lack of Hebrew I still understood. But yeah, the main focus, why I'm here today, is to talk about mobile security. I won't bore you too much with Keynote today, so there will be some, let's say, more fun stuff to come as well. But just wanted to go over a few reasons as to why and who we are at Jamf as well. So without further ado, I wanted to talk a little bit just about the threat landscape today in terms of mobile devices. This will lead us to ways or reasons for why we need to secure mobile devices. Then we'll get to the live stuff. So I've got a few live things to show you on a test demo mobile device, as well as on the admin side that we can look at. And if we've got some time, I like to talk, so I don't always have time left at the end. We'll look at some additional information as well afterwards. But briefly, who we are at Jamf, just keep in mind we've been around quite a while. Currently we have, these are even old numbers, so we have over, I believe, 76,000 active customers on over 32 million devices. It's a lot. I won't bore you with all of these numbers, but yeah, we've been around over 20 years, originally in the management space. More recently, we've also been in the security space for both Mac and mobile devices. That includes Android, even to Windows, actually. But things that you should be aware of is the reality of working anywhere in today's corporate world. Remote work has quadrupled over the last decade. 70% of workers actually don't sit behind a desk, and yeah, 85% of workloads are now in the cloud, as well as with users or employees willing to actually make sacrifices so that they can have a choice of device. This is important because, well, if we work in IT or if we work in security, we need to then very much be looking at these devices. How are they accessing corporate resources and how are we securing them? So that's the goal of what we'll actually look at today. Recently, there has been some news as well around mobile security and mobile risks. Things like the Digital Markets Act, if you're familiar with that over in Europe, it's very much around basically lowering the entry points and to be able to have a fair market for yeah, digital use. This will also affect how we can look at security. Examples of this recently, there was quite some news around Brussels spyware bombshell, so a surveillance software that was found on phones for EU Parliament defense members who were actually being targeted. So targets of mobile, threats can really be very large players like the EU Parliament, but it can also be small players, smaller companies that may be being targeted by this. So I think everyone does need to still be aware. It's not only the big ones that are being targeted here. Just a little bit more about Jamf. We actually have our own Threat Labs team that do their own research. This is into both mobile malware as well as Mac-specific vulnerabilities or threats. As I mentioned earlier, Jamf's been around for over 20 years. We have experience in securing Apple devices already within that 20 years. But specifically our Threat Labs team, they've actually been able to uncover, these are old numbers as well, but over 120,000 zero-day phishing detections and blocks as of 21. And this last number has grown as well, but zero-day vulnerability exploitations that we've discovered and worked with Apple on being able to patch. If you ever do want to read more about what our Threat Labs team are specifically finding at Jamf, they actually keep a blog as well. We had a great one at the end of last year around fake lockdown mode. So a post-exploitation tampering technique where basically threat actors are tricking users into thinking that their device is in lockdown mode, but they actually still have full control of the device and maybe doing things like taking control of the camera or microphone. These are definitely things that we would not want occurring on well, any devices, but especially ones that are accessing corporate resources. So what ways do we actually have of securing our devices then? There's three categories that I'll talk to today. The first two are the main priority here, so around security configurations and attack prevention. A lot of you might already be familiar with security configurations, or you apply security configurations to mobile devices within your environments. This could be done through just an MDM, right? Jamf Pro is our MDM, but you could do this also through other MDMs. This could include configuration profiles, which are applying certain settings or controls from a security perspective on your device. However, our security tools at Jamf, we can also apply more things outside of this, as well as monitor more things outside of this. We can have control of things like vulnerability management. We can even run audits or compliancy on our devices. We can also make sure that through MDM and security tools working together, we can apply things like data protections or DLP to devices as well. The other side is more so around, okay, we've set rules and compliancy for our devices, but how do we actually prevent or stop attacks? This could be things like malware detection, network level attacks, or preventing things like company or corporate login details being phished through, for example, malicious links. These are all things that we can very much do with our security solutions and what we'll have a look at today. The last one is a little extra. We're not going to do a deep dive on this, but we also do have a solution at Jamf for threat hunting. This includes telemetry collection, deep analysis of devices. It's essentially a mobile EDR, but that's more so for post-event analysis. If we've got time, we'll touch a bit more on that, but the main focus today is around the security configurations as well as the attack prevention. We'll get to the live cooking here in a second, but just wanted to cover, again, a few examples of what you may already be doing. So you might be enforcing a mobile acceptable use policy. This could, again, be done through configuration profiles through an MDM or through security tools as well. We'll look at what those security tools are that we could be applying to have an acceptable use policy here in a second. DLP is something that I mentioned. This is something that we can also very much do using Jamf Pro. So being able to manage that corporate data can't be taken out of managed locations into unmanaged locations. Keep in mind what we're looking at today doesn't apply just for fully corporately owned mobile devices. These would be devices that you as a company are handing out to employees and you have full control and management supervision of. But actually, a lot of our tools also do apply for BYO devices. That's just something to keep in mind as we talk about things like data protection policies as well. We'll be looking at managing vulnerabilities and applying patches today as well through our security solutions. On the right here, we've got an example of vulnerabilities that we're able to see in real time and the devices that they'd be affecting. This can then be remediated through policies, perhaps in, for example, the MDM. Also, on the app side, we need to be aware of what applications users are perhaps installing themselves on their mobile devices. Even if we have fully corporately owned mobile devices, chances are we're still allowing users to install applications themselves. So we want to be able to make sure we have a visibility over if these apps have their own risks and could be a backdoor into getting access to corporate data. Then we'll also be discussing not just at the device level, but what about the network traffic leaving our devices? Mobile devices are still accessing corporate resources. These resources could be cloud apps. As we mentioned, our stats show that more customers nowadays are actually using cloud resources than on-premise apps. However, we do have a solution to where we can securely tunnel and encrypt the data in transit from our mobile devices through our security cloud and have tunnels that go to either your cloud or on-premise apps. So we'll touch on this as well, and we can actually deploy this in real time today as well. Again, as I mentioned, keep in mind, we're mainly looking today at a focus on corporately owned devices, but what we are discussing can very much also be applied to a BYO environment. In a BYO environment, we would more so be looking at the clear separation of personal data to the corporately managed or installed applications and accounts on the device. We can keep these very much separate if you're using Jamf solutions, where we can actually tunnel, encrypt, and secure just the corporate data and managed applications on a user's device, while allowing the user's private browsing and usage of the device to remain so. If you want more details specifically about BYO, definitely reach out to Wediggit or ourselves here at Jamf. So the next bit was more so around attack prevention, but here I wanted to actually rather show you a bit of the back end of what we're looking at when it comes to an admin console side. We'll also, while we're in that admin console, we'll actually configure a few things, and we'll test deploy this to a device to see it actually in action. So let me bring up my security cloud portal. This is our security portal for managing and configuring our security policies, and where we can also outline our attack preventions for our mobile devices. Now, a lot of data up on the screen all at once. This is just my dashboard here. But what we can manage in this console is policies for accessing corporate resources, internet controls over things like content filtering, as well as data usage on mobile devices. And lastly, security. So actual threat prevention policies, as well as application blocking or watch listing. So I'll kind of briefly look through all of these just to give you an idea of the depth of options that we have within the portal. Then we'll actually configure an activation profile and deploy this to a test device to see it in action. Access policies will allow us to create secure tunnels and access to corporate resources either in the cloud or on-premise. You can create applications by choosing either predefined SaaS apps or custom applications. The thing to note here is you can create a policy for any app, not just the ones that we have here, but even custom websites. If I wanted to create one for jamf.com, for example, I could very much do so by creating a custom application. I could name this what I want, Jamf, and I would be able to put in the actual host names of this application or even direct IPs or subnets. We could choose exactly what users would be also allowed to access this through device grouping. So if I put in jamf.com as a domain here, I would be able to add this and go next. We can choose what users within your organization are allowed to access this particular domain. We can also choose security rules for are any and all users allowed to access this? Or will we restrict, for example, access if users turn off our routing app? Jamf Trust is an application that we leverage and deploy to our end users' devices. We'll do this actually in a second to my test device. But Jamf Trust is our security and ZTNA, so Zero Trust Network Access routing app. If users, for example, have the ability to turn off our Zero Trust Network access, we can also restrict their access to corporate resources. We can even do real-time risk assessments to make sure that if there are risky devices within your environment, that they're being automatically blocked from accessing resources. In this case, I could set that even low risk or higher devices would be blocked from accessing the domains that I've outlined here. So jamf.com. Lastly, we also have an option to actually have access requires the device to be managed. So for users who may have the option of removing MDM profiles from their device, we can also make sure that these devices are no longer than able to access your corporate resources. So what we're building here is a form of gatekeeping to your SaaS or on-premise applications, making sure that only secured devices or users are able to access your corporate resources. And we can also outline how these devices are accessing them through traffic routing. So we can encrypt and route this traffic through our Zero Trust Network Access split tunnels, and we can do so through our shared IP pools from a specific region, or we can even have dedicated IPsec gateways or tunnels to your corporate network environments, where we will hand over the traffic to your corporate network once it reaches that through a gateway. So there's a lot to customize here, but you can create as many access policies as you like for corporate resources and make sure that only the needed users have access to the needed resources on secured devices. Now, more so on the internet access side, we want to also control what corporate devices are able to access on the open internet. So we have a quick way of outlining content filtering policies for grouped categories. You can see that I have allow or block options here. If I wanted to, I can look at these further, and I could, for example, block specific video or photo options while allowing others. This is useful as well because we can actually create custom rules to either override blocks or to make sure that we are also blocking specific websites that we know we don't want users to have access to within our environment, but are not blocked by our default policies. We also do have a domain checker though. So if you wanted to actually verify if a certain website that you would not want users to be able to access is part of one of our rules, you'd be able to do so here. If I put in netflix.com, we should be able to see what category this is in. So it's under our content filtering categories of movies, Netflix, and TV. If I click on any of these, I can then actually be taken also to the rule itself. I won't do a deep dive into the data usage policies, but know that we can also set usage controls over having data limits for if you have those individuals within an organization who travel frequently, we can make sure that they don't have surprised data roaming charges on their cellular plans. But we can also make sure that there's certain allowed rules or custom sites to be allowed or capped, even if they reach their megabyte threshold for data usage. This can be a real game changer. We actually have some customers that specifically use our security cloud solutions mainly for this feature because it saves them so much money and surprised cellular data roaming charges. But the main one I wanted to focus on was the security tab. Here, we can look at our threat prevention policies for our devices. That will tie in nicely with our predefined compliance or configuration profiles that we might already be applying through the MDM. These are categorized into web threat prevention. This includes things like phishing, data leaks, as well as malware network traffic or cryptojacking. If we have these enabled, you can see that we have auto responses to remediate these. That means regardless of where a user may be clicking on a phishing link, we can make sure that that is automatically blocked. And we can also customize the alerts. Is it you as an admin who's getting alerts or the actual end user as well through that client app of ours, the Jamf Trust app? Note here, we can also customize the severity as well as if these events will affect our device's risk score. Because if you remember in our access policies, when we create access policies to corporate resources, we can make sure that a real-time risk assessment is done. And if that device is of a low, medium, or high risk, that it will automatically be blocked from accessing that resource. So these very much tie in to the actual access to your corporate resources. We do then also have endpoint threat preventions. This is specifically around mobile malware, device admin apps installed, sideloaded apps, as well as third-party app stores installs. This is even more relevant today, again, with things like the Digital Markets Act and then the opening up of third-party solutions across Europe. Note for these, if we don't have an auto response, we're still able to report on this and we're still able to have it affect your device's risk score. This means that if, for example, users are sideloading apps, well, if they have done that, we can still make sure that their access to corporate resources is blocked, even though we haven't been able to block the actual install of that sideloaded app. The last two here evolve around network, so dangerous certificates, adversary in the middle attacks, or risky hotspots. Mobile users, as we looked at in the stats, are not generally anymore at a desk for the entire day. That means you might be connecting to, cafe Wi-Fis, train or airplane Wi-Fis. We can make sure that there's an auto response to secure and encrypt the traffic through these risky hotspots. The device level ones evolve more so around device details. So things like jailbreak status or OS versions. Are there vulnerable OSs installed on that device that we need to be aware of and perhaps be pushing software updates to through the MDM? Again, just note all of these options can affect the device's risk score, and we can also customize the severity of these. If, for example, we don't have a policy through the MDM for lock screens being disabled on devices or enforcing a passcode, we could, for example, set this as a very high risk event if the users would have the capability to disable the lock screen themselves. This does highlight, though, how we still need good policies on the MDM side to make sure that things like lock screen being disabled isn't left up to just the reporting and risk setting within our security tools. We probably still would definitely want a configuration profile to set a certain passcode of a certain length on our devices. But we get an incredibly large amount of details here in terms of what we can actually look at. This is all given back to us also in terms of reporting for our devices once we've deployed the solution to users. For example, in access to corporate resources, you get very granular details around the breakdown of connections, as well as how many have been allowed or denied to certain tools. This can give a lot of information around where perhaps certain attacks are being targeted, or figuring out why certain users are always being blocked from accessing certain resources. That could be because of management status, could be because of the device's risk score, or it could be because the user has disabled, for example, our zero trust network access routing, which means we can automatically block their access as well. You can see individual users' devices as well as the device type, and actually sort by allowed and denied here as well. On the internet side, you can see blocks, usage, sites and apps that are being accessed. Note that we're not trying to be by any means any kind of big brother here. We very much align with Apple's view on privacy. We just want to be giving you the information on malicious activity on your devices, or blocks that you have outlined through your policies on your devices. But we don't want to be looking at all and any user traffic from that device. The security side, though, is I think the most interesting here, because we can actually look at open threats. For example, here is a one for Granny is Zombie. Not familiar with that app myself, but this is actually showing us on a Android device. This again highlights that we are cross-platform here. While we are a management company only for Apple devices, our security tools do work cross-platform as well. But we get information on the device as well as the user and what the actual threat is. I would be able to click on this event for more details of it as well. Here, there's actually a Google Services spyware indication. On the left, you can see also secured threats. This could be malware network traffic. You can see the URLs here as well. Or it could be things like phishing, app data leak locations. There's a lot of information to look at. We can also look at this from a vulnerability view. So seeing either device vulnerabilities. Note in this view, I have some anonymized device names. We can also anonymize device and usernames if you have that stance on privacy within your organization. We can see the individual vulnerabilities, click on them, and view the actual source pages. This is information that far exceeds what you'd normally have within just an MDM or even on other security solutions that you may be already deploying to your mobile devices. As I mentioned earlier as well, we can also look at app insights. This can be for MDM installed or user installed applications. We can see that Booking.com, for example, is an app that is a medium risk level because of perhaps a vulnerability within it. I can see that indeed there's a vulnerable version of this app installed, and I would be able to dig deeper into what users or devices are affected with a certain version. I can also see application forensics around the permissions it needs, the URLs that it needs access to, or even third-party binaries. So it's a ton of information that we can look at. This is all powered through our Miriam Analytics tool. We have a machine learning tool that is able to identify, as I noted earlier in our statistics, zero-day phishing attacks. This is a real-time feed of actual phishing links that we're able to identify and block. This is a pretty good one, actually. You can notice that the special character usage in the I in Gmail on mobile devices, these may be very, very difficult to notice for your users. Same here with this one for YouTube. They're very, very complex in terms of not being able to easily see on our mobile devices. But we can see also removed apps and risky apps that we're able to identify. Note that these are applications that can actually be making it through Apple's vetting program for the App Store. These are not all just side-loaded apps. These are actual apps that may still be on the App Store. So we are very much securing any and all categories in that sense. Now, last things I wanted to show were just around a few reports that we can see also on deployment and governance. So we can give you a higher level overview of your devices in terms of things like location services being enabled or disabled, push notifications being disabled, background refresh, also details on UEM management and sync. Our security tools very much work together with the MDM. That means we can actually integrate a UEM as well within our Security Cloud portal to share real-time information with the MDM on security events. This is very, very useful in terms of not just blocking or being aware of security events within our Security Cloud, but also having it affect perhaps actual configurations or custom remediations within the MDM side. We can also even actually have MDM events for devices, set the risk score for our devices within the Security Cloud, which will therefore actually restrict your access again to corporate resources that we're tunneling to through our Zero Trust Network access. And the governance one will give you probably the best overview of on your mobile devices, what needs to be done or where your attention should be paid. Now, your number would hopefully be more than just 3% of devices being enrolled in an MDM, but the more important details here in my example would be around compromised devices. Very quickly, you can see the devices that are compromised and by what means. So in this case, 2 devices have malicious apps, 1 has actually been jailbroken, and there's been 4 devices with 72 phishing attacks detected on. We also can see policy recommendations. So what should we do to actually make our environment more secure? You can see I already have phishing blocks enabled, malware network traffic enabled, as well as Wi-Fi traffic is being covered, but I don't have a UEM integration yet done in this portal. You can even get a more detailed overview of these if you wanted and see personal information data leak details as well on devices and be taken directly to this. But what does it actually look like to deploy this out to our users? Well, let me see if I can log back into my environment here and we can actually do some live cooking. I've got a test iPad here that's actually live sitting in front of me. So no pre-recordings. We'll see if things don't go well, then at least you guys will see it live as well. I've created an activation profile already within my environment here. This is actually very quick and easy to do. We just choose service capabilities. This can be network access. So again, routing of traffic to the access policies that we've created, network security, as well as content controls. Now we do have a few others here around employee badge. We have a unique integration with Swift Connect to where we can actually also use our mobile devices as digital badges to gain access to, for example, corporate offices. But that's not a main focus for me today. You'll see the supported platforms. One thing I did want to highlight here is how we have a unique option when it comes to, do we want to have users require their credentials, so SSO integrations with your IDP to access corporate resources, or we have a new option as well, which is around managed device attestation. So this is done through network relays. This is an Apple native technology that Apple has built as a very quick and secure method of having user devices gain access to corporate resources. The key difference here is for user credentials, we install a client app, so our Jamf Trust application, and we'll enforce users to log in with their identity provider before we begin tunneling and encrypting access to corporate resources. For network relays, we actually leverage certificates where Apple is able to attest that a device is indeed the device that it says it is, that device is able to communicate with Apple and gain a certificate, and it's able to basically confirm that indeed it's a real Apple device that it says it is. So we actually don't need any user interaction when it comes to accessing corporate resources. We can still push our Jamf Trust client application, but the user never needs to open or actually do anything to gain access to the routing and tunneling of that traffic. This is also very useful as we can leverage this during automated enrollment. If you use automated enrollment for your mobile devices, from the second that a user gets a mobile device and begins setting it up, we can push our network relay profile to that device and begin tunneling and encrypting the traffic. Note that your decision may depend on the supported platforms that you're hoping to deploy this for. Our existing WireGuard VPN is supported across all platforms, whereas managed device attestation, as it's an Apple-specific technology, it is only applicable to Apple devices in this case. But let me come back to my activation profiles here. I've already built one where I'm actually leveraging our network relays. So that means I will not need to log in on my test device here once we actually deploy what's needed to it. But we'll need our Jamf Trust application. We can push apps through our MDM, so we'll do that as well in a second. But one thing I wanted to highlight here is I actually have enabled already our UEM integration. So this is a syncing to our management tool. I'm using Jamf Pro, and I've inputted my URL for my Jamf Pro instance so that these two can now talk and share information with one another. This is great because when it comes to building or creating activation profiles, I can actually directly choose the type of device I'm deploying to. I can see a configuration profile, and I can deploy this to my test device group. I'm going to just click Deploy to Jamf Pro, and I'll get a little green check mark to say that that configuration profile has been applied and deployed to the group of devices that I've outlined here. The only other option we need is a managed app configuration. I can copy and paste this directly within and apply this to our Jamf Trust application that we deploy to our device. So let's go see if we can actually do this. I'm going to go to my Jamf Pro instance. I'm going to log in. I've already enrolled this test iPad into my Jamf Pro, but I haven't really deployed anything to it just yet. We can actually already see, though, that the relay configuration that I just deployed is already here on the device. And that was in real time. I didn't actually deploy this earlier. When we just set that test deployment, it came up. Now, you can actually see all of the included domains for where we'll be tunneling or encrypting through our Zero Trust Network access the traffic to these resources. So I can already see that that configuration is there on the device. But I still want to deploy our Jamf Trust application with the necessary managed app configuration. So this is what I've copied and pasted from the security cloud, and I've already applied it here. I'm just going to make sure that I can deploy this to my test group of devices. So I'll include that there. Perfect. We should hopefully see it shortly. There it is, actually installing. You can see the speed of our management commands as well going to the device. And if I open this app, I should have all that I need now here present. It's going to ask me if I want to allow notifications. I'm okay with doing so. And we can already see a security alert on my device. We'll touch on this in a second, but importantly, my device and my network are protected on this device already. So this is done through the network relay, as well as the security and network configurations that I've bundled into this activation profile. Note, if I would be using our existing WireGuard VPN, which is also working on Android, Windows devices, the only difference is when I open this app, I would be prompted for an IDP login with an IDP that you've integrated with your security cloud. So you have the user authentication rather than, in this case, we didn't see it happen, but in the background, my device has been able to, through managed device attestation with Apple, get a needed certificate to verify its identity as a device with Apple. But let's look into this actual security risk. I can see, okay, for me, it's a pretty simple one. I have my lock screen disabled on my test device. So again, we need to make sure that we have MDM policies in place as well for what we're actually applying to our devices. But in this case, it's fine. I've actually caught the fact that I don't have an MDM profile that will force enable a lock screen on my device. So what about the actual tunneling and encryption of traffic or the blocking of internet resources on this device? Let's go see if we can actually have a test around here. If I go, for example, to jamf.com, I actually have a policy in place where if I go to jamf.com, my access will be restricted if my device is risky. Now, you can see jamf.com is automatically actually blocked. It says it can't connect to the server. This is occurring because of my device being risky, right? I don't have a lock screen enabled, so therefore my device's risk score is set within the portal, and that means I will be blocked from accessing that resource. So let's go back to the browser though. Now I've got a bookmark here that says click this link. What would actually happen if I do that? Well, in this case, nothing, luckily. This is actually a phishing link that I've created. And it says that, yeah, you can't browse this page. This is one of our testing links called spam.threatops. But this is actually being restricted by, well, me in this case, or this would have your organizational details on it. So again, without any kind of user interaction, I'm being able to block malicious links, such as this phishing link. I'm also able to automatically block access to important resources, like perhaps jamf.com in my example, based off of the device's risk score. We can also have those, if you remember the grouped categories for our content filtering, this can also be applied. So if I wanted to block, for example, YouTube, I can also do so. Here now it says that I can't browse this page as youtube.com is being restricted, again, by my organization or by me. This is just a quick example of some of the details that we can do. As you saw in the reports within our Security Cloud portal, there is much more that we could look at. You actually would get direct details of this as well within this. So I can see my Apple device and user. I can see transactions as well as block transactions for this device. I can also see details on sites and apps being accessed and at what times of day. I can also see application level details. For example, to Jamf, I can see the denied as well as allowed reports. One nice thing as well is we have this tool called My IP on a Map. We can actually leverage this to verify that our device routing is going through our preferred region. So if you remember on our access policies, we can actually control to each individual resources which region this traffic is being routed through. So if we go to map.wandera.com, I can see that I've actually chosen to route traffic through our EU Central, so Germany shared IP range pool. This can be different for each individual resource, or this could also be, again, tunneling through your existing network infrastructures through IPsec tunnels or gateways to your corporate environments. So there's a lot of flexibility, but this is a useful tool to test that the routing is actually being applied through the needed method. Now, there's a lot more that we could talk about, but the one thing I did want to highlight still was around the policies and specifically the security side. I mentioned earlier that if we have a UEM integrated our management console, as I do, that's how I was able to deploy so quickly the needed configurations for this device, which are shown here in the network relay. But when we have this UEM integration, I can also actually signal the UEM whenever certain events occur. So I clicked on a phishing link on my iPad. I can make sure that any events of this will automatically flag my device as in a certain smart group within my MDM. So you can create smart groups and choose these to then have an extension attribute value for this event occurring. This is hugely beneficial because not only am I blocking the phishing event from occurring, and my security teams can see this block within the portal, but perhaps if you have separate IT admin or MDM teams, they can also see an extension attribute for a phishing event occurring, and they could choose to have their own remediations for that event as well within the MDM. You can see that this can be tied in with the auto responses of blocking, as well as, of course, the device risk scores and severities. If you want more details on any of this, well, luckily you've got our great partner, Wediggit. You've got ourselves at Jamf as well, who work closely, of course, with them. We'd be more than happy to give you a further overview or insight into what this tool would be able to do within your specific environment. But I think for now, perhaps we can look at some questions if there are any from the audience to see, yeah, if there's any specific needs that would need to be covered still.
Yes. First of all, thank you very much, Elmo. Obviously, thank you for this great presentation. I neglected to mention that you can all leave your questions either in the Q&A on the chat. It doesn't matter. It comes to the same bucket. You could leave your answers questions at any time, but we are open to any questions or remarks that you have for this webinar, for this presentation. I believe we at least have one question ready for us from before. Let's see. Yes, obviously some of these questions are for anonymous. Let me see if I can put it on the screen right now. Yes, oops, it's black on black for some reason. Let me see if I can make this look a little bit better. There we go. Just a second. It will take me 1 second. There we go. Let's see. And I'll send it again. No, I don't know why. One more try. I will read it for tomorrow. How does Jamf's Zero Trust Network Access, or ZTNA, integrate with existing VPA infrastructure? How do we integrate Jamf version of ZTNA if we currently have ZTNA already?
Yep. So we can do this in many ways. I did mention to some degree our gateways, so we can integrate dedicated IPsec gateways or dedicated internet gateways. This may be able to then hand over the routing and tunneling of encryption to your corporate environment. However, I also was in my example using network relays. The problem perhaps with existing VPN infrastructure is that you might not be able to take advantage of it right away. You might need to wait until we're in the user OS, we have a certain application installed, or that the user does something to enable something. But with our network relays, we're actually able to, as I mentioned, begin tunneling and encrypting traffic already during the setup of a device. So there's extra security, and it also integrates again with those either device attestation from Apple, or if you don't need or want to use the tunneling and encryption through our network relays during the setup, we can also use that existing WireGuard setup, which is leveraging your SSO credentials. But why would you use it with your existing VPN infrastructure? You may actually look at replacing it fully with this dedicated solution of ours, which is more granular because it's a split tunnel to corporate resources. We're not tunneling all traffic. We're only tunneling traffic to resources that we've created access policies for, which is generally better for privacy, but also actually better and more granular for security. Or you may look at actually integrating our solution with existing VPNs where our network relay tools may be, for example, filling a certain gap or niche that your VPN might not be getting to.
Okay. But when it comes to compliancy, it shouldn't make a difference. Maybe just company needs or something like that, right?
Yeah, it also depends on the reporting and again, the integrations. So does your existing VPN tool, for example, allow risk-based access where if your device is deemed to be risky, can your VPN automatically block that traffic to the resources? I would be surprised if it does. That's a compliancy view in our perspective. And also, the integrations with the UEM syncing that I showed at the end there, right? Does your existing VPN tool, for example, take into account MDM, actions or events, for example, that can actually affect users' access through a VPN or our ZTNA to resources? Those are kind of the things that would be needed to be thought of.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Let's see if we have another question right here. Here we go. This is a good one. How do you handle security for contractors who need temporary access to company resources on their mobile devices? So it's about contractors and mobile devices. It's a common issue here. Yes.
We do have flexibility in terms of the activation profile that I deployed, right? That had certain service capabilities enabled, and we can choose a certain way to deploy that to users. if you have temporary users or users who need temporary access, we can create different groups within the security cloud and deploy different activation profiles to those groups. We can also actually even set expiration dates for activation profiles, which means, hey, Nino, I'll send you an activation profile to your iPad, but it has an expiration date of 2 weeks. So for 2 weeks, we'll tunnel and encrypt your traffic to my internal Jamf resources. But after that 2 weeks, we'll actually, for example, automatically remove or block your access to those resources.
Okay, gotcha. And I think we have 2 more queued up, and we will be finished with those 2. Here we go. I think we discussed it briefly, but maybe just a few more words. Can you please talk more about BYOD situation? Does it work in tandem with device attestation?
Yeah. So for BYO, we can integrate, again, the separation of personal and work data on users' mobile devices. And through that separation, we can make sure that we're only routing and tunneling and encrypting the traffic to corporate resources. When it comes to device attestation, I would need to double check if we can actually support this for BYO, mainly because we actually need to leverage generally for BYO a per app VPN. So per app just means that we're telling our ZTNA routing tools to route only specific application data, which means we're not going to attempt to even route personal data from users' devices. However, it should, in theory, still work with device attestation because we can still have the needed certificates be gotten or retrieved from Apple from that device. We can verify that that device is indeed the one that it is. And we should hopefully be able to then apply per app VPN settings based off of those that we've outlined in the MDM.
Okay, great, thank you. I think, and the last one is, I think, a more general one, but is important one, which is where does Jamf take its data for threats, etc. I think we might glance over it a bit, but I think it's an important one in our environment these days.
Yeah, and the key here is we're not relying on some kind of massive third-party list of threats or known vulnerabilities or other things, but we have our own Jamf Threat Labs team who are actually actively looking for and hunting for threats and vulnerabilities, but also Miriam, our machine learning tool that we have internally that I showed that brief view of, that's able to identify, right, rather than a team looking at phishing links 24/7 throughout the day. Miriam's able to identify based off of certain criterias of like how long has a certain domain been active, or is it assigned for a domain or URL. We're able to take these indicators and then make a assessment on if something is deemed risky or not. This applies for both phishing as well as for things like risky applications or side-loaded applications. It's going through Miriam or in certain cases based off of things that our Threat Labs team have uncovered.
Okay, great, thank you. And I believe that recently, in the last year or two, some of these Jamf Threat Labs are also reside in Israel, which is also a personal pride here that Jamf bought several Israeli companies, so at least some of them are somewhere in the Tel Aviv area. So
absolutely.
So great. Okay, so thank you, Elmo, and thank you and Tuda for everybody who came here to this webinar. We'd like to thank all of you, and hopefully this will be the beginning of a new venture for us and Jamf, being a series of webinars and presentations together and events. I'll switch back to Hebrew. אנחנו מארגנים כנסים פיזיים אצלנו בחברה, כנסים חדשות על ג'אמפ ועל אפל ועלינו Wediggit, על כל מה שחדש. אנחנו קוראים לזה Parents Branch for IT, ממש ברנץ' מדדים רוגלח, כל הדברים הרגילים והכל. אבל מדי פעם כשיש לנו דברים חשובים להגיד, או וובינרים ודברים טכניים והצגות ודמוים שאנחנו רוצים לארח גם את ג'אמפ, שקצת יותר קשה להגיע מחול לארץ, אנחנו נעשה גם וובינרים כאלה. אז אתם מוזמנים, תעקבו אחרינו בכל המקומות הרגילים, בלינקדאין, יש לנו גם קבוצה מיוחדת למקדמינס בלינקדאין, בכתובות שראיתם, אנחנו ב-wediggit.co.il וכדומה, ואנחנו מקווים מאוד לראות אתכם באירועים הבאים שלנו, שוב, בין אם אונליין או פיזית אצלנו במשרדים בהרצליה, וכמובן, לא לשכוח, אם אתם רוצים להרחיב את הידע שלכם בג'אמפ, אתם רוצים להיות טכנאי ג'אמפ וג'אמפ פרו מוסמכים, קורס ג'אמפ 200 אצלנו במשרדים ב-13 בינואר, ולקבל הסמכה רשמית של ג'אמפ עם מבחן והכל. הוא יהיה קשה, אני לא מבטיח שהוא יהיה קל, אבל אל תדאגו, אני אעשה את המיטב כדי שתעמדו בקורס בהצלחה. וזהו. Once again, thank you very much, Elmo. Thank you for having us this amazing webinar. And hopefully we'll see you all again in our next webinars. And Elmo, we hope to see you again in some of our next ventures together and some interesting technical presentations in the future. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day, have a great weekend, and all have a relaxed time here and abroad. Goodbye, everybody. להתראות.
Thank you. Bye for now. Thanks, Nino.
Bye-bye.